Under the spotlight in this video, we're going to be looking at Saudi Arabia, and we're going to be looking at, it's going to be sort of in three parts, this video. And I was going to release it last week, but basically I was having problems not with trying to understand what was going on. It's basically just overload of information, you know what I mean? So I've had to really sift through, try and keep this video under at least half an hour and try and keep it around 20-25 minutes. So I've just basically given you the best bits, I suppose, the more definite bits where Saudi Arabia appears in the Bible. What we're going to do is look at the history of Saudi Arabia, where it's actually mentioned, and we're going to look at the very important thing, and that is bloodlines. And the Bible is all about bloodlines. If you get into the Bible, if you read it from the Old to the New Testament, even the very first, when you get to Mary and they start talking about the birth bloodlines, you know, birth of Jesus, they start talking about the bloodlines going back, isn't it? Very, very important. The Lord places a lot of importance on this sort of thing. So you're going to find that basically Saudi Arabia is, in a lot of ways, you'll see it's very similar to Israel. It's sort of the odd man out in the Middle East, but it's the odd man out, but not the same as Israel, you know. But when you look at this, when I come to the conclusion, the more I look at that country, the more I think it's got a very major role to play, but it's not clearly defined in prophecy. You'll see it's all a bit vague. So what this presentation is going to be all about is just really giving you jigsaw pieces, and you can piece the things together. I'll admit I've got a load of jigsaw pieces here, and I haven't really, at this moment in time, managed to piece it together. So that's what I've decided to do with this video, is just put them out there. And I may do a part 2 to this, you know, but I just want to get this thing out of the way, because it's been about 2-3 months I've been looking at this. So let's get into it. So the first part will be history. The second part will look at prophecy. And then the third part will look at, say, what headlines are emerging that tie up with Bible prophecy, as in Bible prophecy in the news concerning Saudi Arabia. Yes, so this is a follow-on video going into more detail about Saudi Arabia, because I have made videos about Saudi Arabia before. The recent one I made was on the Saudi prince and his visit, especially to the US, and he visited Silicon Valley, went to, I don't know, Apple and Facebook, met the CEO there, he went to see Trump, the president. He's been all over the place. He's been in the UK, met the Prime Minister here, he's met the leader of the Church of England, the Archbishop of Canterbury. You know, watch that video. Strange goings on. The next thing is, I did a comparison between Saudi Arabia and Mecca, and Rome and the Catholic Church, and US, and I suppose probably New York, the three main candidates in Mystery Babylon. Watch that video as well. So in effect, this is the third video on Saudi Arabia, which must tell you something. It has got a major role to play in Bible prophecy. Let's start off with the bloodlines. This is very, very important, as I said earlier in the video. So basically, it all started in Genesis, and basically Abraham, as is mentioned many times in the Bible, isn't it? The Lord says he is the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. The number of times he says that, it doesn't bear mentioning, does it? But I mean, if we got to look at this, it's like a family tree sort of thing, taken from Abraham onwards. If we go to the middle line, Abraham was married to Sarah, and Sarah had Isaac, and Isaac married Rebecca, and Rebecca gave birth to Esau, or I think he's called Esau, and Jacob. Now Esau is also called Edom, and Jacob became Israel, isn't it? And Esau married the daughter of Ishmael, and he started off the Edomites, which in modern day language is Jordan. Whereas Jacob, who was called Israel, he had 12 sons, and they became the 12 tribes, which should be coming up on the screen now. If we go over to the right, there was Keturah. He had 6 sons by her, and they formed the modern day Iran and Iraq. And then also Abraham had the handmaiden Sarah actually said to Abraham to go to the handmaiden for more children because she couldn't have any more. I think that's what the problem was at that time. So he went to Hagar, who was Egyptian, and she was the handmaiden to Sarah. Lots of Bible verses on that. I think she ran away and an angel came to her and told her to come back saying she's pregnant. Yeah, and she gave birth to Ishmael. And Ishmael also married an Egyptian, and he had 12 sons. And most of those are in, I would say, Saudi Arabia, but also they'll be in United Arab Emirates, all over the Middle East, really, Yemen in particular. Yeah, but a lot on the Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, a lot of them on the Saudi Arabia, what they call then the Arabian Peninsula. Now, if we go into the 12 tribes, which are come from Ishmael, that they are as follows. It's mentioned in Genesis, and they are Nebajoth, Kedar, Abdil, Mibsam, Mishmar, Dumar, Massa, Hadar, Timar, Jeter, Naphish, Kedemar. All those, it is mentioned that towns would be named after them. They're the names of tribes as well. And basically Saudi Arabia, or Arabia back then, they were very nomadic. But that's the 12 tribes of Ishmael, who is a descendant of Abraham. And then we've got the 12 tribes of Israel, which I don't need to repeat the names, but they are the sons of Jacob. Yeah, they inherit the promised land. And basically the descendants of Ishmael, the 12 tribes, they inherit a different land, but it is not the promised land. And now you can see why there's all this conflict in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is the odd one out, especially because it's got connections with the West, and most of the Middle East doesn't think much of the West at all. Basically because they're Christian for one, isn't it? And they don't agree with all the economics and all the rest of it. But that is another video. But I think the number 12, it comes up a lot, doesn't it? The 12 apostles, the disciples, 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 gates in the city, isn't it? Named after the 12 tribes of Israel, and also the 12 tribes of Ishmael. So if you go back to that bloodline, Abraham was a key element. And you could say that because of all the countries, most of the countries from Ishmael, they are Islamic, aren't they? Jacob, also called Israel, the 12 sons from Jacob, they are the Jews, isn't it? And that's it. So, and they follow Judaism. So when you see that's the problem that you see in the Middle East. I mean, I never could understand it, perfectly honest, but now after seeing this family tree, you can see that the whole of the Middle East is intertwined there through this bloodline of Abraham. But throughout the Bible, it's always mentioned, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's not the God of Abraham and Ishmael. He never says that, does he? He blessed Ishmael, he did. But the Lord is God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the bloodline that formed Israel and the 12 tribes, which goes all the way through the Bible, and it appears right at the very end, doesn't it? With the 12 gates to the New Jerusalem, isn't it? Channel on my website's named after. Very, very important. As we all know, Saudi Arabia, a bit of background on it, it contains the world's largest, or one of the world's largest oil reserves, and also it is the home of Islam, and the two most holiest cities in order are Mecca and Medina. The third one is Jerusalem, where the Dome of the Rock is situated, isn't it? I often wondered why that Dome of the Rock is situated where it is, but when you go back to the Abrahamic roots, now you can see, isn't it? That's why it's there. They haven't put it there to be irritating. They're saying that they have something to do with that Jerusalem. So, and you can understand it, can't you? Here's another interesting fact. If you study the maps of previous empires in the Middle East, there was the Persian Empire, there was the Empire of Alexander the Great, and there was the Roman Empire, and also you could say the Christian, not empire, but the Christianity, the extent that where it's spread. If you look at those maps which are flashing up on the screen now, what is the one country that none of these ever touched? Was Arabia, currently called Saudi Arabia. Why is that? Because the place was just wilderness. It was referred to, I think somewhere in the Bible, I can't remember where it is, past Edom is referred to as wilderness, isn't it? The wilderness. And that's what that place is. Well, that's what it was until modern times, until they struck oil and in a big way, and it changed them into a major economic and prosperous country, which was forecast in prophecy. The Lord said that that country would become a major nation, isn't it? And that's what I'm saying. When you look, there's a lot of similarities between Saudi Arabia, they've got ties with the West, and also Israel has ties with the West as well. And the other nations don't, do they? Israel and Saudi Arabia, they have a history there, which we'll come on to in a minute. They haven't exactly seen eye to eye in the past in the Bible. Another interesting fact is Saudi Arabia has been what was called the Arabian Peninsula, now consists of basically Saudi Arabia, the two Yemens, Oman, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and the Sinai Peninsula. All that forms what is basically what they was called Arabia back then, or when it's mentioned in the Bible, one of the 12 tribes like Kedar or Dumar or Timar. That's what it was back then, but it's been sort of broken up. But Saudi Arabia is basically the great nation that is mentioned. Prophecy that Ishmael will become a great nation refers primarily to the Saudi Arabia that we see today. Yes, so getting on to the hostilities, the old Arabia, the Ishmaelites, I suppose you can call them, the 12 tribes of Ishmael have shown towards Israel, or vice versa. I'll flash up these Bible verses on the screen. I'm not going to read them, I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, but 1 Chronicles 5:19, Reuben, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh made war with Ishmael's descendants, the Hagrites, Jeter and Naphish. In 2 Chronicles 21:16, the Lord stirred up the spirit of the Arabians, and they stirred them up against the evil king Jehoram of Judah. And then thirdly, when the righteous king did come to the throne of Judah, who was called Uzziah, God helped him against the hostile Arabians, which is mentioned in 2 Chronicles 26:7. So that's how the Lord works, isn't it? You know, if his chosen people are following his ways, then everything is good. If they go against the covenant, wherever it is, then he sends Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, all of it, isn't it, to Jerusalem every time, isn't it? And lastly, Nehemiah wanted to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, which had been destroyed by the Babylonians, and the Arabians were opposed to this. And it's mentioned in Nehemiah 2:19, 4:7, and 6:1-9. But also there's some history there that the Arabians or the Arabs were friendly towards Israel. The first one is the Arabs were present in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost, when the Lord poured out his spirit on the church, which is mentioned in Acts 2:11, that big day. And also when Paul got converted, he went to Arabia, of all places. And that is mentioned in Galatians 1:17. But back then, Arabia was wilderness. And I think, to be perfectly honest, it sounds very similar to when he went into the wilderness. I don't know how long Paul went there for. It wasn't 40 days and 40 nights, I don't think. But Jesus went into the wilderness, it's the same thing, isn't it? So it brings us on nicely onto Saudi Arabia. And where does it appear in Bible prophecy? So the first prophecy where Saudi Arabia is mentioned, I've got loads, but you'll see them on the top of the software. If I go back, I've got Daniel 11, Ezekiel 27, Jeremiah 2:10, Jeremiah 2:4. But the first one for me, the first concrete one, is Psalms 83, 1-8. We've got a definite mention there. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assur is also joined with them. They have hope from the children of Lot. Basically, if you go into that, it's all the Middle East and the Islamic nations, isn't it? And the Ishmaelites, basically the 12 tribes of Ishmael, which form the Ishmaelites, they are mentioned in this. Yeah, if we go to Isaiah 21:11-17, we have a read of this. Now, many people say that Isaiah 21 has been fulfilled. There is mention of Babylon is fallen. That is talking about the Babylon which actually did fall. So that prophecy has been fulfilled, and archaeological evidence, many people are saying, confirms that has been fulfilled. But we'll come back to that, because that thing has got very strong cross-references to, that statement has got very strong cross-references to Revelation, the mystery Babylon in Revelation. But anyway, let's get into Isaiah 21:11-17. The burden of Dimar, it's one of the 12 tribes. He calleth to me out of the seer, Watchman, what of the night? Watchman, what of the night? The watchman said, the morning cometh, and also the night. If ye will inquire ye, return, come. The burden upon Arabia, which is modern day Saudi Arabia. In the forest in Arabia shall ye lodge, O ye travelling companies of Dedanim. The inhabitants of the land of Timar, again one of the tribes, brought water to him that was thirsty. They prevented with their bread him that fled. For they fled from the swords, from the drawn sword, and from the bent bow, and from the grievousness of war. For thus hath the Lord said unto me, within a year, according to the years of an hireling, and all the glory of Kedar, another tribe again of Ishmael, shall fail. And the residue of the number of archers, the mighty men of the children of Kedar, shall be diminished, for the Lord God of Israel has spoken it. No cross-references here to Revelation at all. But there's a lot mentioned there, but a lot of people are saying a lot of this 21 has been fulfilled. Yeah, but I just thought I'd put that in there. The next one is Ezekiel 38, and that is the Gog Magog War, isn't it? Now, what is mentioned, we know that basically there's going to be an alliance formed between Libya, Sudan, Ethiopia, and also Iran, Turkey, and Russia. Yeah, they're going to descend upon Jerusalem, Israel, and we're seeing that forming now in the headlines, isn't it? But what role does Saudi Arabia play? It's all a bit vague. This is from Ezekiel 38. If we go down, Sheba and Dedan. Dedan is in Arabia now, the modern day Saudi Arabia. Sheba is probably the modern day equivalent, would be Yemen, yeah? So let's read this. This is Ezekiel 38:13. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish. Again, this is another vague thing. We'll come back to that, this Tarshish. With all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey? To carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil. Yeah, that's their role in it. It doesn't look like they are part of that alliance, but it's a bit vague, isn't it? So I've just thrown that out there. It's something, if you actually, I'm just looking at the cross-reference on there. No, there's no reference to Revelation at all. Nothing at all. But that's another jigsaw piece. That's one for you people to look at. But Sheba is Yemen. Dedan would be one of the basically modern day Saudi Arabia. But the Tarshish, a lot of people saying that ties up with Tyre, and Tyre's in Lebanon. Yeah, some people saying it's that. Some people say that Tarshish is the West. Yeah, it's something. The merchants of the West, and that could be America and Western Europe. We don't know. Some people are speculating that's what it could be, but which would say that Yemen and Saudi Arabia and the merchants of Tarshish, if that is the West, it would say a lot, doesn't it? I mean, basically Saudi Arabia is one of the few that's got a very strong relationship with the US because of the oil situation, isn't it? But something to think about. The next incident we see of Arabia, or mentioned as Kedar or Timar, or all these other names that the tribes of Ishmael, the towns of Ishmael, is this Isaiah 42:10-13. Let's just read it. Sing unto the Lord a new song, and his praise from the end of the earth, ye that go down to the sea, and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. Let the wilderness and the cities thereof lift up their voice. The villages that Kedar doth inhabit, let the inhabitants of the rocks sing. Let them shout from the top of the mountains. Let them give glory unto the Lord, and declare his praise in the islands. The Lord shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yea, roar. He shall prevail against his enemies. Yeah? Mention of Kedar here, the wilderness. Again, this is hinting that maybe Arabia will turn, and they'll give glory unto the Lord and declare his praise in the islands. If we look at the cross-reference on that, it's mentioned in Revelation. And if we look at this, cross refers to Revelation 7, 9 and 12. And it's funny because if you read this, I'll read it, Revelation 7, 9. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. That's Revelation 7, 9. It's a cross-reference from Isaiah 42:12. Is it the same thing? Let them give glory unto the Lord and declare his praises in the islands. Yeah, and is mentioned. Interesting. Another jigsaw piece. And here's another one again which hints at, could mean anything, but read this. Isaiah 67. All the flocks of Kedar, again Arabia again, shall be gathered together unto thee. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister unto thee. They shall come up with acceptance on mine altar, and I will glorify the house of my glory. Another jigsaw piece, similar to Isaiah 42:12 by the sounds of it. If we go into the next one, it's mentioned in Jeremiah 25:15. Another long one again, 25:15 to 24. Let's have a read of this. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel unto me, take the wine cup of this fury at my hand, and cause all the nations to whom I send thee to drink it. And they shall drink and be moved and be mad, because of the sword that I will send among them. Then took I the cup at the Lord's hand, and made all the nations to drink unto whom the Lord had sent me. To wit, Jerusalem and the cities of Judah and the kings thereof and the princes thereof, to make them a desolation and astonishment and hissing and a curse as it is this day. Pharaoh king of Egypt and his servants and his princes and all his people, and all the mingled people and all the kings of the land of Uz and all the kings of the land of the Philistines, and Ashkelon and Azar and Akron and the remnants of Ashdod, Edom and Moab and the children of Ammon, and all the kings of Tyrus and all the kings of Zidon and the kings of the isles which are beyond the sea, Dedan and Timar and Buz and all that are in the utmost corners, and all the kings of Arabia and all the kings of the mingled people that dwell in the deserts. So they're mentioned in there. And this ties up quite strongly with a cross-reference, Revelation 14:10. I'll read this. It's not 100% there, but it's very, very similar. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So another one to look at, but certainly as mention of Arabia, the kings of the mingled people that dwell in the desert. Dedan and Timar, again, is mentioned there in Jeremiah, isn't it? And finally, here's a couple of mystery ones. These are a couple of little things I just look at. I keep coming back to over and over again. And here's the general state of play with these prophecies. And it's to do with Saudi Arabia again. And that's what I'm saying. As you can see, it's all a bit vague. But this one here, if we go into it, the first one, this is one of my pet topics, is Isaiah 21:9 mentions Babylon is fallen. Yeah, now we're going down a route here of like basically repetition twice of is fallen. When I see that sort of thing, why is that mentioned? Back in the day when the Bible was written, they didn't have, say modern day ways of highlighting text, so they had to put it either in capital letters. It's very rare you see that in the Bible. Mystery Babylon, you see that in capital letters, don't you? There's other things that are mentioned. I think the branch comes up in capital letters, which is basically mentioning a bloodline, isn't it? But Babylon is fallen is only mentioned a couple of times in the Bible. Yeah, it's mentioned in Isaiah 21:9. Let's read it. And behold, here cometh a chariot of men with a couple of horsemen, and he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the graven images of her gods he hath broken unto the ground. Now this Babylon is the Babylon that's mentioned in the Bible, which did, as I said, archaeological evidence has proven that this actually did take place. But if we look at Revelation, which is looking into the future, we've got it's mentioned two times. The first time in Revelation 14:8, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Yeah, and then we go to Revelation 18:2, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. That is in connection with Mystery Babylon. And now you can probably see why. I know Isaiah 21 has been fulfilled, and so that statement there, but why do they come out with that odd statement, Babylon has fallen, then it's repeated again in Revelation? When I see that, when I see repetition like that, and I see repetition is going from the Old Testament to the New Testament, as I said, the Bible is like a spider's web, isn't it? And there's a connection there. For some reason there is a connection. They could have said Babylon is fallen, or Mystery Babylon is fallen, but no, they said Babylon is fallen, So is the Babylon that is mentioned in Isaiah 21:9, is that the same place that they're talking about in Revelation 14:8 and Revelation 18:2? I put it to you people to consider it, leave your comments below. But that prophecy, to all intents and purposes, has been fulfilled. So it can't be, can it? But why do they use that strange, bizarre, only happens 3 times? Yeah. Another one is which is a Middle Eastern custom, which is another reason why I say Mystery Babylon is in the Middle East. And this Ezekiel mentions this. Yeah, it's the same verse that I've used before, Ezekiel 27, but this is Ezekiel 27:30. It's about casting dust on their heads. Yeah, Ezekiel 27:30. And shall cause their voice to be heard against thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast the dust upon their heads. They shall wallow themselves in the ashes. Yeah. And if we go into Revelation 18:19, and they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. This is, again, another verse in connection with Mystery Babylon. It's another way of actually identifying with it. If you go to read Ezekiel 27, the whole verse, get the context, and you'll see it's exactly the same situation again. It's the same thing. And that's why I start thinking, well, hang on a minute. This Babylon that is mentioned, and this casting dust on their heads, there's just 2 things there, isn't it? That are very, very similar. And there's merchants mentioned in both of those. Is it the same place? Which is why I put Mecca as one of the top candidates when I compared it to the Catholic Church and New York and America. Yeah, it came out tops. For that reason, there's just so many connections there. But again, it's a bit vague. I'm not saying it is, but it's just something I keep going around in circles on. They do cross-refer, but Bible scholars are saying that Isaiah 21 has been fulfilled. So, but I don't go with Bible scholars. I just look at the Bible, and it's just saying that, isn't it? Babylon is fallen, and casting dust on their heads. Very strange customs, not mentioned that many times in the Bible. There's a connection there, isn't there? Yeah, so in summary, you can see there is a very powerful mentions of Arabia, only mentioned a couple of times, but if you take the descendants of Ishmael, the 12 tribes of Ishmael, which become the 12 princes, and also there's 12 towns. Certainly Kedar, Timar, Dedan, they're mentioned many times, and they come up in the certainly the prophecy sections of the Old Testament. They're not confirmed in Revelation at all, but basically, as you can see, the summary is I've just thrown a lot of jigsaw pieces out there to you, and if you go on the web, there'll be a lot of literal translations out there. I suggest you read Daniel 11 as well. I'm not going to go into that because otherwise this video is getting too long. I don't see anything concrete there at all. Daniel 11, the verses are, let's just get this up. Yeah, Daniel 11:40 and 43 to 43 and then 45. It mentions, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. It mentions about the king of the south. I'll just go quickly. Some people say that, a lot of people say, Egypt is the king of the south. Some people say Iran is the king of the south. and others are saying that Saudi Arabia is the king of the south. But again, it's something beyond the scope of this video. I'll maybe do a part 2 on that, I don't know. And I suggest you read Ezekiel 27:21, as I said, Jeremiah 2:10 and 11, and Jeremiah 2:4 and 5. Yeah, but certainly it's mentioned in Psalms, it's mentioned in Isaiah 21, Ezekiel 38, the Gog Magog War. It is mentioned there, but they seem to be sort of on the outside edge, asking questions. You know, it doesn't seem to be they're part of the alliance. So basically, what we're going to do now is I'm just going to leave you with headlines. I'm going to stop talking. These are the current headlines that have emerged over, say, the last 6 months to a year concerning Saudi Arabia, and that's the final jigsaw pieces. And as always, keep your eyes firmly fixed on the Lord, and peace, love and joy.